Now, we've been studying biblical prophecies, and we looked at all the major countries, including Israel, the prophecies that are regarding Middle East, because that's where most of the Old Testament prophecies revolve around. Whereas when you look at, I mean, there are some global pictures and so on, but we get from Old Testament far more on Israel and the surrounding nations, and we've segregated those prophecy that regards further afield nations from Ezekiel 38, 39, and then prior to that, all those nations that are around Israel, and what hasn't happened, what will be happening in the future, and how we can actually pray, because this is critical. It's not just some other politics somewhere else. It's going to impact everybody, and it directly impacts the world harvest, and also church when Israel comes into her place. As I said, there is one major player in the Middle East prophecy that we've left out, and that is Babylon. Any study of the prophecy of the nations is terribly incomplete without the study of prophecy on Babylon. Now, Babylon means both the city and also the whole empire. It's both. And when it comes to Babylon, it's the longest Old Testament prophecy with greatest emphasis in the Old Testament. That is the prophecy given to Babylon. The reason is this prophecy towards Babylon is not just staying as a nation, but this actually evolves. That is most obviously influential of Israel, because that's the one that destroyed Judah and the temple. And then it caused so much, whole deportation was done by Babylon. So God has a lot to say about Babylon and God's people, Jews, to come back out of Babylon after 70 years of exile. That same Babylon actually is picked up in the book of Revelation as the harlot Babylon, or mystery Babylon, which is not just the same Babylon, but it's transformed, and it takes on the whole stage of the world. It takes, actually, its presence is felt all over the world. And it's not just ancient Babylon or the city of Babylon, it becomes a mystery Babylon, and it's got many facets. So we're gonna, I guess, trying to look at that. There are more than, when you look at book of Revelation, more than 10% of the book of Revelation is devoted to Babylon. Did you know? It's a lot, because this is something that God doesn't want us to be ignorant. He wants us to know, study, understand. It's the greatest riddle in the New Testament prophecy and also Old Testament prophecy. Out of 404 verses in book of Revelation, 44 verses are regarding this mystery Babylon or harlot Babylon. In fact, when you study Old Testament, New Testament, there are three major Babylon. Tower of Babel, that's where it originated. It actually speaks of the spirit from which whole Babylonian empire came up, and then it will become the greatest and the most fierce world power that church and the saints and Israel will face and overcome. Amen? Let's not get struck with fear, because, see, Daniel have said, we quote that quite often in chapter 11, it says, those who know their God will do exploits. And Daniel did. See, Babylon in his days was the world power. It's called principalities and powers. Remember when Daniel was praying in Daniel chapter 10, see, Daniel had a vision of 4 empires from his day to the return of Christ. That was Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And he faced Babylon and he faced Persia. As he was praying and fasting, what happened? The angel of the Lord came and showed him the Persia, the angel of Persia, or the prince of Persia, that's the principalities and power in his day, was going, and then principalities of Greece was going to come in. After that, Rome was going to come in, and so on. But he faced two empires, two world powers, two principalities. What is it? It's Babylon and Persia. And how did Daniel do? He didn't cower. Where was he? He was right in the center of the world empire. He was right at the driving seat. And then he overcame. He served so many kings, empires, he served Babylon, and he was serving under Persia, and then he became Medes, and right through, he was like the stars that burn brighter and brighter. So that's the challenge. As the spirit of Babylon comes in, will God's people, like Daniel, be overcomers? And how Daniel and his friends overcame is actually in book of Daniel, chapter 1 through 6. I mean, from their growth, from early days, their devotion, and so on. The Spirit of God was upon them, and none of them compromised. None of them were overcome by the spirit of the world, but they overcame what they were facing. So then what are we facing? We're facing the same thing. We're facing the same thing. In fact, that comes into the fullness of maturity, but it's the same thing. So let's read Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. Daniel chapter 2. This is I believe, the most accurate, the greatest blueprint that we have of regarding the world history and the government of men until Jesus comes back. Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. I'm going to read from verse 31. And this is, you, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, and the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. That was the dream. What's the interpretation? That's an awesome dream, awesome interpretation. And let's get the interpretation in verse 38. Towards the end of 38, beginning with you, just before 39. You are this head of gold, that's Nebuchadnezzar. But after you shall rise another kingdom inferior to you, and then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, the kingdom that will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. The kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it. Just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay, and as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of man, but they will not adhere to one another. Just as iron does not mix with clay, and in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that he broke in pieces iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. Amen. And this dream is certain, its interpretation is sure. Okay. So, you see, this basic vision is the kingdoms of the earth, starting from Daniel's day, all the way, starting with Daniel, all the way. What happened? I've done something, sorry. I don't know what I've done. Oh, what have I done? I can't see anything. Oh, I came back. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Let me show you. You probably are familiar with it. Okay, can you see? Okay, so here we are. We are seeing, this is an image. This is made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then iron and clay. Babylonian Empire that has come in with King Nebuchadnezzar. And then after that, there will be chest and arms made up of silver. And after that, there will be belly and thighs that will be made up of bronze. And then after that, there will be legs made up of iron. And then feet and toes mixed with iron and clay. And we know from the history, the gold, that's a Babylonian Empire, which lasted about 70 years. After that came silver, which is inferior, both Media and Persia. See, 2 arms, 2 chests. So that's 2, Media and Persia came in on the east and the west. And then there is a Greek empire that came after that, made up of bronze, and that includes thigh and also that reproductive sort of area. That is, well, the Persian Median Empire was, started by Cyrus, and then the next one, Greek Empire came in, and Greek Empire was the one that really reproduced its culture even to Roman Empire. Even though Roman Empire came after that with great military power and conquered Greece, Greece conquered Roman Empire in terms of ideology, thought, religion, culture, and even language. So that really has been that reproductive sort of area. In fact, we are still living in that Greek culture and Greek thinking. But the Roman Empire was the militarily powerful empire, and obviously Jesus came in that time. But you see the legs, and then there are feet and toes, and it looks like that's a mixed one, and then revived Roman Empire that we will see sometime soon. Okay, now let me just stop here. Okay, go back, and let's read parallel passage, Daniel chapter 7, just a few verses there. And then we see basically Daniel has another vision, but it's kind of saying the same thing. And Daniel chapter 7, verse 2. This is years later, Daniel saw. And Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and the 4 great beasts came up from the east, from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched it till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth, and it made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, it was raised up on the one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Verse 7, after this I saw in the ninth vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horn, and there was another horn, a little one coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. I think I'll just stop here. And okay, just go back. What is the first beast? It's the lion with wings, and the wings were plucked off, and the man's heart was given, mind was given to it. Who is it? King Nebuchadnezzar, who went mad, and then, right? He repented, and he believed. So that's King Nebuchadnezzar. It's an empire of Babylon. The symbol was a lion. After that, see, silver and the chest and arm, Mede and Persia, is spoken of as bear with 3 ribs. That's 3 of the major nations that they have devoured: Lycia, and then Egypt, and also Babylon. And then the king was Cyrus. And then after that, leopard with 4 wings. They are so fast. Leopard is faster. Bear is huge and powerful, but leopard is fast. It's got 4 wings. Who is that? Alexander, it's Greece. That spread so fast. Vast continents was taken. But after that, he was replaced by a beast, another beast that was different than all other. So now the last one is different from all others. And in there, we see it's not even a normal beast. It's like a beast-like creature. All the other things were kind of all beast-like creature. But the last one is a composite beast. So it's worse than any other thing. And during the Roman time, just before Christ came, there was this king by the name Antiochus Epiphanes. Some of you may have heard. He was the picture of Antichrist, who came and killed so many Jews, and then desecrated the temple, and offered pig's blood in their temple, and called on the name of Zeus in the temple of God in Jerusalem. So he's a kind of a picture in the leg just before Jesus came. And just before Jesus returned, it talks about the little horn that will come up and they will pluck out. That will be the little horn is what? The Antichrist that will come. And let me just have a quick observation, is that this vision, very clearly in verse 20, it says, it's about the vision of the end of the age. Vision of the end of the age. From Daniel's time, there were 4 successive kingdoms of men that are listed here, which is proven by accuracy of the history, but they are replaced by something of different nature or different spirit. That is, each time they replaced, it was inferior to the previous one. Gold to silver, and from silver to bronze, and bronze to iron, and iron to iron and clay. So what does it say? It's actually each kingdom is going down in time. It's getting worse. It's becoming more and more unruly, and but it's getting even harder each time. See, gold is the most malleable, soft. Silver is harder. Bronze is harder than silver. Iron is even harder than bronze. And iron, clay, it doesn't even give, and they don't even mix. So that's harsh. So harshness of human government increases. It degenerates to the point of now it'll just fall apart. Iron and clay don't even mix, don't even hold together now. That is the last kingdom's picture, which means the very last kingdom the very last Babylonian kingdom, as it resurrects, it comes back, it's not going to be all completely, working and so on. There will be a lot of discord and disharmony while it uses brutal force. So that's the picture of the human government descending. Now, in Daniel 7, what we just read, each of the kingdom is likened to beast. So that's heaven's perspective, unfortunately, on all human government. God's kingdom is the only kingdom with king, but all forms of human governments are beastly in its nature. It's basically run by people with insatiable desire for power. So it has a nature of beast, and it gets worse and harsher, and it gets harder, and it doesn't even mix together. It doesn't hold together, and it falls apart. And then another point, the third point I want to make is, although there are 4 parts of the stature, it's also still one whole connected piece, which speaks of interconnectedness. It's the whole thing is one idolatry statue that Nebuchadnezzar actually sets up for himself for worship, self-worship, worship of himself as God. That dream God gave was a warning to Nebuchadnezzar, don't do that. But what does Nebuchadnezzar do? He says, you've got the right interpretation. He goes ahead and sets up, just like the vision's warning. He will be destroyed if he does that. He goes ahead and then he sets up in the land of China, in a flat land, this statue of himself and his kingdom. And what happens? He loses his mind. And God judges him. But later on, God gives him mercy, and he repents. He comes back. He's the only one who came back. The rest, we don't know they ever come back. But it's got beastly nature. And that's really a idolatrous. It's a humanism is really at the head, in the center.
Paul, I think we lost you. Oh dear. Paul?
Yeah.
We lost you for last about 30 seconds. You were frozen for about 30 seconds.
Okay, can you see me now?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay, there was a problem with the other computer. Yeah, I had some problem with something. Okay, anyway, so last 30 seconds. So where was I? What did I say?
Nebuchadnezzar was the only one who came back.
Okay. So it's got the beastly nature, and even though it's got different animals, they are connected with one another. When empire is replaced by another, that principality and power, influence is not actually gone. Another one comes to replace it, but actually it gets mixed. And it gets mixed, it gets worse, to the point that the last one actually becomes the worst. It's a mix of all 4. So I want you to see Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. You don't have to turn there. I'll just turn to that and I'll just read it. Revelation 13, if you want to turn it, you can turn to it. Revelation 13, verse 1 and 2. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, it says, then I stood on the sand of the sea, which means sand of the sea is kind of a timeless place of eternity where you actually see the whole history. And I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. can you see that this is a composite beast of everything rolled together, which means the spirit, principalities and powers, the evil spirit or the prince. Apostle Paul says the principality, that was upon Media, Persia, Babylon, Greece, and Rome are all rolled into one, and they will come back in one final form as a final mystery Babylon for the whole world to face, because it will have the widest power base. And you see also the length of each kingdom actually gets more powerful and longer. See, Babylon only ruled for about 70 years, and it disappeared, disintegrated. And then it was replaced by Media and Persia and Greece, both of which ruled for about 200 years. But Roman Empire has been in continuation for about 2,000 years. Even though what we know as Rome, the Western Rome, was destroyed early on, only about 300, AD. The eastern part of the Rome actually survived until about 1450. Sorry, the Western Rome survived almost to 500, not 300, sorry, almost 500 BC, 476 AD. So, but the eastern part of the Rome survived all the way, and then it's gonna come back. So that's what we are facing. I guess what I'm trying to say is that what we are facing is the same thing that the people of God, Israel, has faced ever since. What Israel faced in Jeremiah's day, the spirit is the same thing that is coming back with everything else all rolled together. And when you look at Daniel 7:20, it's the same thing, that each beast are not destroyed. They're just set aside for the right time until all of them gets destroyed. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, clay, all of that gets destroyed when the stone cut out of without man's hand strikes the feet. Then the whole thing's destroyed, which means all of the human empire and the spirit that they control each empire gets destroyed all at the same time. I hope that makes sense. So that's what we are called to conquer and overcome. And as church and also as the Israel, as they comes back. Now, what is the stone cut out man's hands? We all know that's the kingdom of God coming and becoming a mountain, Zion, Mount Zion. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 7 and 8, we know that Jesus is the stone that the builders have rejected, but he comes back. And he comes back and he becomes the mountain that replaces all other mountains in the kingdom of God. Now, it talks about the little horn that will come with 10 horns. Do you see that how many toes do we have on the feet? 10 feet, 10 toes, sorry, 2 feet and 10 toes. And when it gets resurrected, how many horns does the last empire, the resurrected Roman Empire, have? 10 horns. We have a bit more detail here. So we've got Antichrist, which has a very horrible picture of having eyes. And then he speaks, it's got mouth and the eyes, and he plucks out 3 horns, and then it becomes dominant horn over the whole 10 and so on. And we see in Book of Revelation, when we talk about the mystery Babylon, the final empire that will come, that will bring the Antichrist, we say the same thing, 10 horns and the little horn, everything is in agreement. So this is not a guesswork, I guess. We are seeing the history having been fulfilled exactly. The little horn speaks of Antichrist. The eyes speaks of intelligence and a lot of surveillance, that are around. So we have kind of all-seeing eyes nowadays. Proud mouth that speaks pompous words, obviously the humanism, that words that speaks, that very, very proud mouth. Okay, so after that, what happens? When you read Daniel chapter 7, it says that saints after that were made to reign with God, because suddenly the little horn is destroyed by the Son of Man who comes from heaven. As the Son of Man goes before the throne of God, like this is a vision of the throne of God, the Ancient of Days, and then he comes with the clouds, and then he receives the kingdom. When he receives kingdom, what happens? Suddenly the little horn is destroyed. And then the saints were made to reign with the Son of Man on behalf of God over all the earth forever and ever. But that in between time, there is a persecution of the saints of God from this little horn. They will not have unlimited power, but he will be given power for a little while. So is that okay so far? Are you okay emotionally that little horn will be given? There is a set time, not very long, but it will be given a short time that will have influence, and saints of God are to overcome during this time. And when you go book of Revelation, there is a protection. Obviously, it's very clear. So now, can I say that, you know, we are destined to rule with God, but there is a short time of persecution ahead. Now, that is one of the most difficult, straightforward Bible truth to actually convey. But some of you, you know, may not like me saying that anymore, but it's just the truth. It's the Bible. Jesus said, for a short time, to the church, to the believers, that you will be hated by all nations because of me. So we are coming to that. That's why we are studying Book of Acts, because Book of Acts had all the glory, and it was a triumphant church, but there was heat of persecution against the church. Now, let me say, whole church didn't die. In fact, it was a selected few who were chosen and trained by God to do that. It's an honor to shed blood for Christ. But people, as they were coming under the heat of persecution, they were sharing the word, and it spread like wildfire. Okay, so I think that's a hardest thing to share, that there is a set time, not very long, 3.5 years, but the pressure time is coming. And I think it is very important for Christians to actually accept this. This is where things begin. And then we face the future head on as described by the Bible, not have a different theory or different attitude, but be prepared mentally, spiritually to overcome and overcome by the Spirit of God. Now, I shared it maybe 2-3 times in the church. Some of you may have heard my dream that I had in 2009. I think it was 2009, October or September. I fell asleep, and it was one of the most vivid dream where I feel like, I'm not sure whether it was just a dream or what was it. I felt like I was really there. And I was in a very large ship in a very beautiful afternoon, looking out in a beautiful ocean. I could see the sun reflected off the ocean, and the ship was on the sideways like that. I was looking at the blue ocean, and there was a beautiful shore on this side. And I just looked up, and then in the corner of my eye, I saw a very large wave, rogue wave, unusual wave coming in, breaking from the shore. And I had to look at it again because I couldn't believe my eyes. It's just very unusual. And soon enough, I knew within a few seconds that it is a tsunami. And this is before Asian tsunami, that tsunami, right? And in Japan. And as it was coming in, suddenly I was going, oh no, this is tsunami. I was the first one to see. And then I was just basically, alarm switch, is all come on. And soon the alarm went on in the ship, going boom, 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 boom. And in a dream, I could see my view angle changed from looking at the ocean. And then I went down under the ship and I saw all the propellers going really fast. Ship was turning. It was trying to turn because it was on the sideways. It was trying to turn. As it was turning, huge wave hit the ship as it was making a turn, and I felt the impact. Poof! Ship was so huge, and the wave is like 6 or 7 sort of floor kind of a thing, and it hit, and I could feel the impact. But after the impact, it became very quiet. Before it hit, I said, "Oh no, will we survive? Will we survive?" After it hit, I could see the impact, and then I saw the wave going out to the other end, and I thought, whew, we are okay. When I said we are okay, it began to rock. And it was rocking, it's very strange. It was rocking and rocking like playground, this thing. It was getting worse instead of getting less. And it was going almost 90 degrees, and I was in the center holding onto the railway kind of a thing. And so I was going like almost 90 degrees, and I'm going, uh-oh, we're going to capsize. And I woke up and I was praying as I was waking up. And I was praying, what is this? What is this? Why am I having this bad experience? And I was asking the Lord, and this is what I felt at that time, 2009. And, that is a warning dream. 2008, I felt. 2008, we had what? We had a global financial crisis, GFC. And to me, that was a warning dream. What hit us in global financial warning was only a little warning shot. But what is coming is much more in economic, religion, natural disaster, and military and economy. So all 5 areas. And since then, what have hit us is that COVID also hit us. And there was a number of different things and that was into mix, but this is what I felt. What God is saying, the ship represents the church and the leadership of the church. And very often, where I'm not trying to say anything negative to the church, I'm part of it. And when the ship faces sideways, facing the world, when the tsunami hits, it'll just capsize. But when we face the front, that's how you don't capsize, you can go over. But if you're facing the side, you go over. And what I felt was that you will see different waves coming. And when you see it coming, it'll be too late to change the direction. You have to face the future head on in your mental state, in your emotional state, in your spiritual set, based on the Word of God. You've got to face the future head on. And many Christians or the churches are facing sideways, hoping for a good time, good leisure cruise. Therefore, when these things begin to come, warning sign will pick up. But when the warning sign, natural warning sign picks up and you try to turn, it'll be too late. It'll hit you so hard and you will capsize. So my warning from then for the prayer is that, Lord, help us, help me, help the church to face the future head on as your word warns us as these things. And what happened in 2008 was only a practice run. And then what is coming is greater tsunamis of the last days. Like Jesus said, these are like a birth pains, that the world is in contraction and the world is going through this birth canal, so that Jesus will come back and all these things will be replaced. It's going through convulsion, right? In politics, in religion, in natural disaster, in economy, in military. And if people are dwelling on earth and hoping to go back to 1970s, 1980s, early 2000, when life was good, easy, you could travel and you have fun, and just a life as like a leisurely kind of a spiritual life, you will find it very, very difficult and very disturbing. Because guess what? I believe that we are not going back. We're not going back. We are going forward. We're going forward. COVID has changed the world last year. It's still changing the world now with injection, and all the other different measures, travel and all that, on top of what is happening in economy and the world politics in the Middle East. I've shared about that last week and 2 weeks and so on, all that pressures coming together. Even when the pandemic ends, I don't think we are going back to leisurely life. I believe we've hit the acceleration point where either you swim or sink. And it is very important that we are mentally, spiritually real, not hopeful, not pie in the sky and hoping for a better day, but very real and be purposeful. Because God is controlling the world, and this is our finest time. Bible has so many prophecies to warn about these things, and then Bible is always the same. God's people are rising during this time, not going down. True church is not going down. It's actually rising with greater power and greater purity. And this week, during early, the morning prayers and the afternoon prayers, I felt, I know this verse and I read it before to you as well in the early, I think June 9th study. I believe God is saying this to the church. And when you look at Malachi chapter 3, verse 2, it's saying the same thing. Let me just read you. But who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? And Revelation chapter 6 is talking about this is the voice of God. He's saying the great day of his wrath, or the day of the Lord has come. Who is able to stand? Who is able to stand? And you know what? The answer comes in the following chapter. God's people are standing in the midst of trouble. They're not hiding in the cave. Who is hiding in the cave and saying, rock, fall on us, kill us. I don't want to face this anymore. Who is saying that? Kings of the earth. People, powerful people, elite people, all kinds of people on earth are saying, hide us from the face of the Lamb of God. But the people of God are worshiping God with palm branches before the throne of God, and great number that cannot be named are thronging into the kingdom of God. So I believe this is the question God is asking. Some are saying, our natural thing is, I want to hide, not stand, hide, or I want to escape, get out, not face it, get caught out, exit before any of these things happen. And there are teachings that are like that, but I believe personally, I'm not saying I know more or whatever, but I believe the right attitude is not, Lord, you might just catch me out. I believe right question the right attitude, I believe, the church that facing in the last day is who is able to stand? Will we be able to stand? And we need to stand during this time and get on with the job. I believe with all my heart that is the right attitude. And when Jesus comes, he will all take us out. Until then, we've got to be ready to stand and engage. And Luke 18, pray, go beyond the unjust system, and then work with God, Okay, now, so then coming back, oops, it's at 8:30? I'm just getting started. Where are we? 5 minutes, we'll come back. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about this. But where are we in the timeline according to Daniel prophecy? This is the one I want to get to, and then we want to see what's coming. And then I wanted to talk about also what is, we are between the feet and the toe stage. Do you believe that? Do you agree? We can discuss that. Between the toe, feet and the toe. Okay? What's happening in Europe right now? Europe is according to the prophecy of the Bible, is breaking at the seams. Starting with Brexit, and it wasn't holding together very well before. It was breaking off just like clay and the iron, and it's becoming exacerbated since 2015, 16, 17, and it's getting worse with the influx of immigration from the Middle Eastern countries flooding Europe, and it was already bad. What is the dividing three issues? One is economy with a single currency, straitjacket of single currency with different economic capacity, different working ethics. Northern Europe and Southern Europe is very different, the way they work. And they all share single currency. It was already breaking at the seams. And then there is also a huge divide, increasing divide with culture and ideology, left wing and the right wing, left wing and the populism and, and socialism. And then it was worse. It's more intense in terms of religion and race. Religion and race. It's colliding. But right now, what does Europe look like? How many toes are there? It doesn't look like the right shape. It's got 26 toes or 27 toes, well, 26 toes in one foot and then one toe on the other foot, right? Eastern, Western Europe. So what do I say here? I believe Europe, current Europe as we know, needs to go through rearrangement. I think that's what's around the corner. It needs to be 10-toe Europe. It needs to be 10-horn confederation, and it is not right now. So I believe a lot needs to go and change. What I believe is current European Union will need to break up, and then it needs to be reshaped, regrouped, and it needs to reflect much broader geographical area, because both Rome and Persia and Mid-Persia had two sides, Eastern and Western. Rome had on the Western side, Roman Empire had Rome, and then on the Eastern side, it had Constantinople, which is today Istanbul, which is Turkey. And Turkey is changing its policy away from US, and it's going towards sort of Russia. So what will cause the final feet to pop out, final toe to pop out? I believe we are around there. So don't think that this is it. I believe it's not it. We're going to go through a radical shaking that will change Europe. When that happens, we are coming into proper end time. So it can happen very quickly, but I believe that's what's ahead. Okay, now, what will trigger the collapse of current EU system? Number of things can happen. It could be either economic crisis or the war in Middle East, or it could be both. Okay, so what is problem is now currency crisis and the banking crisis is rife in Europe and in US, but in Europe, I'm hearing it's worse. In September 2019, there was a huge repo market liquidity crisis. So Fed had to inject hundreds of billions of dollars into banking system per day to liquefy credit market from seizing up. What is the repo market? It's banking lending money to one another, but they don't want to lend money to one another because they're afraid. So then if money doesn't get lent, it seizes up, and then something like what happened in 2008 could happen all over again. But Fed stepped in and they were just raining down money, printing money like crazy, without saying QE4. They've been doing QE4. That's what's keeping it afloat. And now what I'm hearing is that now there is a reverse repo problem, which is banks don't want money from central banks. So when they get money from central banks and then lend money, they make money for free. But they don't want to lend it because there is too much risk. So I'm thinking, what do they know that we don't know? We don't know what's happening. But these banking heads are actually cutting down. They are actually closing some personal accounts and the loan accounts and so on. They're reducing the risk. So I guess we can talk about with that. I'm gonna maybe stop here, but let me just end here with the, can you give me 5 more minutes here? Bill Yount, 2017, it was published in Charisma magazine, had a dream or a vision of EU economic collapse, which actually resulted in worldwide anti-Semitism against Jews. And Jews had to flee Europe because it caused so much hatred. They began to blame banking collapse to Jews. It's all these Jews who are controlling banking and all that, and the worldwide hatred actually caused a great deal of aliyah from all over Europe and all over the world back to Israel. That was a vision. I find it very interesting. I'm not saying it's Bible, but it's certainly plausible in today's condition. So now we know that from Ezekiel's study, the US and the Western free world power base will begin to wane, shrink. Do we agree? It'll shrink. What is keeping US global hegemony all over the world? They've got military all over the world. That's what's keeping the world balanced, and that's what floats, their power. They maintain almost, complete power. It's a unipolar world we are living in, but it's going down, and they will use significant power on the world polity, according to the Bible, as we move towards the future. What is giving US unlimited power to put all their military, the US military industrial complex and their army all over the world, which cost, $1 trillion each year? It's a US dollar. They can print US dollar in unlimited sense. So that's, I think that's all in the cards. As if you want to see, we are moving towards the European Union with 10 toes coming out. Something will happen. They will actually cause shift there. And I believe we are going to see the new European Union. Now, when that happens, we are very, very, very close. I believe 10 toes or 10 nations from the Western Europe, 10 nations from the Eastern Europe. I had a map, but I can't show you because I switched off the computer there. But for me, I will be looking at countries in the West like Spain, France, Germany, Italy, and Greece. Why would I look at those? And some of the smaller ones might just merge. But I'll look at those 5 mainly because they were the former empire builders. Napoleon, Hitler, Alexander the Great came from those. And those nations have same religion. Mainly they are Catholics. Catholicism is the national religion in those nations. What about the eastern leg? On the Eastern Europe, I'll be looking at Turkey, definitely, and Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Jordan, and the 5th one, possibly Lebanon or Egypt. Egypt seems to have a slightly different treatment in the Bible. So I'll look at those because Israel, well, the 3 of the horns needs to be plucked out before the little horn. And it could be some of the countries there might just disappear in that sort of thing. Now, can I just say Islam is the main national religion in those 5 or 6 Eastern nations, and Catholicism is the main religion on the Western front of resurrected Rome. Isn't that interesting? Because Islam's Mahdi is really the same person as described as Antichrist in the Bible. Okay, so I believe things are getting set up there, and I'll just finish here. I'm sorry taking so long. Daniel chapter 8 verse 9. It actually speaks about where the little horn comes from. Little horn comes from Daniel 8 verse 9. And out of the one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. What is the glorious land? It's Israel, Holy Land. So if the little horn grows toward the south and toward the east, where is it? It's up above. And then if it is growing toward the east, it must be a little bit towards the west and the north of Israel. So, okay. And that puts those European nations and most probably Turkey. We'll see where it comes from, but obviously it's all the European nations are in the range, and I think it's possibly Turkey. We will see because Revelation 2:13 says Satan's throne was in Pergamum, which is in Turkey. Anyway, I better stop here. I think I've spent too much time. Stop here, and we will have some discussion.